So I'm going to first review what we did yesterday. What we did was we found a poem, so I already have a poem in mind for this project. And it's this one. This is really violating copyright laws too, but we're not publishing it, so it'll be okay. So I'm copying it. Don't sell it as your own work. This poem does not belong to you. Next thing is I'm going to paste that in to InDesign. It comes in one little square box. Everything is using frames and boxes in InDesign. And then what I showed was how to separate these out. So I'm going to control copy and paste it. It's just going to paste wherever it wants basically. There's a formula behind that, but we don't need to know that right now. Copy that and paste it right over here. Okay, the position right now is not important. And we're going to take this stuff out. So take your title and your author out. Make sure you do have a title and an author. Then anything that's lowercase or uppercase, excuse me, change that. Make sure you need the type button and you can get that type. If you retype stuff, make sure that you have not made any typing errors. And then this is the name of the poem. This is the poet's name, and then this is the poem. As you can see, you can move things around in this program. It's much different than using Word or Google Documents. You can place things anywhere, even on top of each other, which may not seem like there's a reason for right now, but eventually there will be. One of the terms that we learned in our vocabulary was hierarchy, and what you need to do is, using your hierarchy, you need to give things the appropriate weight in terms of visual weight and weight in terms of importance. So the title of the poem is generally going to have a lot of importance to people who are searching for, let's say, a poem, or they want to know what this page is about. So it's pretty important to include that at a larger font size. What you may have seen is that I increased the size using the character panel, which is located under type. I'm going to change this site. You have to be linked. You have to be clicked on that box to alter that type. And I'm going to change this. Generally speaking, you want some maybe mathematical relationship between these numbers. You know, you're kind of jumping down from this is 25, which just for symmetry's sake and aesthetics, I'm going to change this to an even number. This square is 26 point type. This one right now is 18. This right now is 12. So it's a pretty good breakdown, but this is still pretty small. I'm going to take it up to maybe 16, see how that looks. Now, I asked the class yesterday, what is it called when everything is on the left like this? And you knew, a couple of you knew, this is called flush left. Flush like you're flushing the toilet, except we're not. We're actually setting type here. Setting type is something that used to be done just by a person called a typesetter, and they weren't even the graphic designer. The graphic designer would tell the typesetter how to set the type, and they would control things like I'm controlling here, the tracking I was doing on here, and the I'm going to select the box here, the body copy. So we have title, we have like kind of a subtitle in terms of design, and then we have the body text. And the body text, I'm going to just do Command All. I don't know if you've tried that. With text, that works really well. And it works in a lot of other programs too. So in here, I've got my 16-point type, and then I'm going to change the space between the lines. That's called leading. And that's something I wanted to see that you knew how to do. Now, to me, that looks really good with this poem. And so this is basically what we were doing today in class. The other thing I showed was how to group all of this together so that you're no longer moving these in isolation. These are going to move as a group. And that's a nice thing to do for a number of reasons. One is because you already know where these are going to be in relation to each other, and now you can put it anywhere on the page. In fact, if you were going to have a picture with this poem, you would decide where this is going to go on the page, which is a nice thing. Now, it might work out that you want your poem to be flush left, and that would be in paragraph styles. So in paragraph styles over here, you've got selections of justified. Justified is over here. That usually does not work well for titles at all. Maybe once in a while for a body copy if you're doing something like a newspaper, but it's generally frowned upon and not something to use in design. This one, flush right and left work. Now, it's not going over all the way because I had narrowed that box away. So I'm going to just have the box just around the type. There's no reason to have all this extra room around everything. Going to kind of condense things in, because the next thing that we're going to do, at this point, those of you who haven't turned this in as a PDF, I was having students turn this in to me as a PDF. And then we're going to go from there. So you're going to reopen your document, and we're going to add a picture in here and some color bars to make it look more like a page from a magazine or a book. So if you're interested in justifying this to the right, excuse me, you need to make sure that the bounding box here goes all the way over to the right side, and then you can press justify. In this case, we don't necessarily have to move the whole thing over. We can just extend it. Again, Command All will get all of this text highlighted, and press the left justify, or the right justify, I'm sorry. Got my left and right mixed up. Now, the poem that, if you're wondering how does this look without all these mucky lines in here, with all these in, you just simply go up to View, Screen Mode, and Preview, and this is going to tell you, this is going to show you what it looks like. Now, something to think about that some programs do for you automatically if you're in Google or Microsoft, they make a margin for you that this program doesn't have, and you might wonder why not. Well, that's because in this program, you literally decide everything. If you wanted it to go off the edge for a reason, you can do that. Whereas in other programs, you're not going to be able to do that, or if you can, it's not going to print very well. But with InDesign, part of the reason these programs are hard to use at first is because everything is basically up to you. So there's nothing that's going to pre-make itself for you. That's why there's not a lot of things like fill buttons, or there's no bullets in here, for instance. Bullets do not exist in InDesign because they want you to construct a bullet. Same thing with something like checkboxes. So it's just kind of a type snobbery thing, but real designers use that, and that's why, because they can literally create everything just the way they want it. So I'm going to put this back over here. In fact, I might go back to the way I had it before. I liked it with justified right, or left, excuse me. And I'm gonna ungroup those. So anything you can do, you usually can undo. I'm going to set this up a little bit differently for you guys. The title is generally something that if you're going to change the font on something to something crazy, this is a place to do it. because it could have a meaning to give to your work. This takes place in a garden, so I'm looking something that reminds me of garden but isn't too, in my mind, tacky. I find a lot of fonts are pretty tacky. That's kind of interesting. A lot of these I've never heard of. This is the font set that I have with my Apple here at home. Ooh, this is trendy right now, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's good. But I think it could kind of work with this poem. I like that a lot. So it's not generally a font I would have probably used for every occasion, but for this poem I will. And this poem has a lot of personal meaning to me throughout the years, so I kind of like that. I'm trying to figure out where is this going to go. Okay, so the next thing that I'd like you to do is we're going to talk about how to put a picture in here. And also we're going to learn how to get some color bars in here that will break up the design nicely. And probably at this point, I'm going to stop the video and start a new one.